And we are live. Hey, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I'm so excited to be back tonight with this special pre-launch event with Alan Drew, here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new book, The Recruit. Alan, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about The Recruit.
Well, hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you to whoever might be out there tuning in. I appreciate it. It's great to be here, and so this is going to be the first time I actually have spoken about this book in public. It's not actually out till next week, so forgive me if I stumble around a little bit talking about it, but I guess we'll slog through it. The Recruit is really like the second book of what's going to be a three-part series, which started in 2017 with the first book. So it was titled Shadow Man. It's got two major returning characters, Detective Benjamin Wade and forensic medical examiner Natasha Betancourt, and they've got a little thing going on that was kind of a troubled thing. So it's a thriller, police procedural, set in Southern California in 1987. When a new anti-U.S. government white supremacist movement was on the rise, and as they're pushing up against a growing Vietnamese refugee community in the area as well. And these white supremacists are sort of using the brand new internet to spread their ideology, and they're using that to recruit people as well. And so the story really focuses around a troubled teenager named Jacob Clay, who was being indoctrinated into this white supremacist movement, and who ultimately commits some horrible crimes against the Vietnamese community. And Ben Wade, of course, and Natasha Betancourt have to try to stop him before he attacks again. And they also need to try to stop this larger white supremacist movement before they strike again. That's the pitch.
Well, that is a good pitch. Thank you, Alan. We can't wait to get into this. And thank you for giving us the inside scoop a week before pub date. So we are hearing about it first, as we always do on Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Catch a Clue is in the audience. Hey, Wendy. She says, hi, Sarah and Alan. Congratulations on your new book. Yay.
Thank you, Wendy.
Wendy, always a pleasure to see your name pop up. Hey, George Beach, welcome. Joining us live from Texas. George, welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to see your name pop up, sir. He says, good evening. So good to have you. Melissa Watson joining us live from Australia. She says, hi, Sarah and Alan. Melissa, welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much. Yay, we are international thanks to Melissa. So Alan, this book is racking up amazing praise. Let's kick off with Jeffery Deaver, who's been on the show twice. I'm a huge fan of his, and clearly he's a huge fan of yours because he has a lot of wonderful things to say. So I'm going to pop this up on the screen right here. He says this book, and just for a quick second, because of our face, extraordinary. The Recruit is as smart and stylish as it is compelling. The plot speeds like a race car on a breathtaking course filled with plots, twists, and turns. And the novel brims with rich psychological insights into the many full-drawn characters. I can think of no other thriller that portrays its vital themes, all relevant to our times, in such a riveting and up-close personal way. Bravo. So congratulations on that from King Deaver. Let's talk about the different aspects of that. So first of all, we all like speedy books, race car pace. What do you think? You're a professor. You're also an author. What do you think the key is to keeping that pace going like a race car?
Yeah, I'm going to say I don't know a lot. I think the key for me is to make sure that there's something of real significance that happens in every single scene. And if something of real significance does not happen in that scene, then it probably doesn't belong in the book. So I'm always thinking about that sort of plot arc, the climbing up that mountain thing, and always trying to have a mini sort of plot arc in every single scene. So something significant happens, and that sets in motion certain questions or certain concerns, or puts a character in an uncomfortable situation, and then that sort of hopefully propels the story forward from there. So I'm always trying to balance going between. I'm always hoping there's something at risk for the characters, all the characters in the story, including the detectives. So trying to balance between what things are at risk for those characters, but also what's at risk in terms of, say, the investigation in the story. So hopefully that just kind of keeps these things compelling and keeps them rolling forward.
good food for thought there. I like the idea of thinking of each scene as having a mini narrative arc, which is not easy to both be weaving a larger one and then also
Right,
little
right.
mini ones. So that's a really interesting way to think of that. Let's talk about the next part of Jeffrey Deaver's amazing praise, talking about the twists and turns. When Jeffrey was on, he shared that he is a vigorous plotter. So he spends 6 months plotting, and his plots are actually up to 180 pages. He also works in a completely dark room where he works with blackout shades and he tactile types. I'm assuming you have the same process.
That's exactly how I work. It's
I
amazing.
love
No. I wish I was one of those plotters, and I've always wanted to be. I'm unfortunately not, so it makes for a very messy process. And when I can tell, Jeffrey gets those books out pretty quickly, so those 180-page summaries must be very helpful. I really don't work that way. I never have. I've tried often to do that, but I'm really just kind of a flying by the seat of my pants kind of guy. But that's not entirely true. I mean, I do as I'm writing. Well, I may have a sense of where the story is going, but I might not know what's between those 2 points, and have to figure that as we go. And then as I write scenes, I'll also make notes to myself, where I think things are going. But I find that if I sit down and try to plot something out, a couple things happen. As soon as I see my handwriting or my words typed down, I think that sounds really stupid, And I also find that I tend to, when I'm plotting things out, I tend to go towards the most obvious things. Whereas if I'm sort of following the characters and following the story naturally as I go, the things that really need to happen in the story come out, and they're a little more original, I hope, than if I was plotting it out. But God, I wish I was a plotter. It seems like it would make life so much easier than the way I work.
I also wish I was a plotter. Alas, I am not. Hey, Stephanie Cooper, welcome to the conversation. Stephanie joining us live from California. She's an amazing bookstagrammer. She is at Fire Pit and Books, and her reviews are lit. See what I did there? Stephanie, thanks for tuning in. Melissa would like to know, Alan, what inspired the story for you, and why did you set it in 1987 of all years?
Well,
Great question.
The quickest answer to that question is that, like I said, this is the second in a series of 3 books, and the first book is set in 1985. So I kind of needed to go back to the 80s. I grew up in Southern California in the 80s. And I grew up in a town called Irvine, California. I don't know if any Californians that might be out there know Irvine. Don't tell anybody, it's Rancho Santa Elena in the book. So part of writing this book and living in the East Coast, writing the first book and moving to this one, was to sort of excavate my experience growing up there, and a town that was a master plan community, 38 miles south of LA, that was really built in the late 60s, into the 70s, and through the 80s as a place for it was really built for white people to escape Los Angeles, and to have their sort of own little world. And so my first book, Elements of Race, started coming into the book just because of where it's set, and the population demographics at the time. So when I sat down to write this in 1987, I think the seed of this book was a conversation I had with an author, Anit Trung, who was visiting Villanova for a literary festival. We were out to dinner one night, and this goes back to 2011, before I even thought about writing this book. And she asked me where I was from, and I said from Irvine. And she said, "Oh, well, when I was 7, I flew on those Pan Am flights into El Toro Marine Base, and then as refugees from, hi Stephanie, Irvine, from the Vietnam War." And so I grew up in the wake of the Vietnam War. But what I was struck about that night is that how little I knew about that history, even though I grew up 5 minutes away from that runway. And so I started thinking about the fact that I never learned about that history. I learned about the Vietnam War, but from a very, very American point of view. Never heard about the history, even though I lived 5 minutes away from it. And I just kept thinking about that, kept bugging me, And so when I sat down to write this book, I started thinking about a place like Irvine, where somebody like me, even though that's part of my history, could ignore that history. And then I was hearing these stories from my father that I'd never heard before about the refugees coming in and people in the town helping out. And so that just kind of snowballed into this story about, I knew that white supremacy had been growing at the time. And because it was a time when the new internet was being used by this new group of white supremacists, it was a different kind of white supremacy that was anti-American government, and actively trying to bring down the government to start a white ethno-state. I wanted to start there as a way to maybe speak a little bit to some of the things that are happening now in this contemporary moment in the United States, when people feel compelled, and mostly white people, to attack their own capital. And January 6, 2020, in part because of the things they read on the internet. These conspiracy theories that have grown out of white supremacist theories that go back, frankly, to the Middle Ages. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, Melissa, thank you for the great question. And Alan, thank you for that fascinating lesson in history. I've never been to Irvine, California. So I've been to other places in California, but I've never been to Irvine. And I didn't know that about their Vietnamese refugees fleeing there after the war. So thank you for that that fascinating backstory. Melissa chiming in saying, yes, that answered her question and is fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yay. Alan, I want to get to another review. This one from Graham Moore, author of The Holdout. And he raves, the recruit is thoughtful, relevant, and brainy. I love that. Alan, not every day you get to hear the word brainy. Alan Drew paints a vivid portrait of a seedy world you're convinced you would never want to visit. Yet as the story tightens its grip, you soon realize you can't bear to leave. Let's talk about that. What did that mean to you? How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts?
I was surprised to hear the word brainy as well. I mean, I normally wouldn't think of myself as being particularly brainy. I was very thankful for the quote from him, for sure. And setting is really important to me in a story. I think in most good books, especially in thrillers, I think the setting is often sort of another character in the story. So the fact that hopefully it comes across being very vivid, that's really, I'm very happy to hear that. And again, when I started writing my first book that takes place in Southern California, I'm living on the East Coast, and I started in the winter when I was in Philadelphia, and was missing Southern California pretty hard, as occasionally I do, and was trying to go back to when I was growing up in Southern California. Was if you go to Irvine now, it's all just master plan. There's homes everywhere. There's strip malls everywhere. Every sort of space is filled in. When I was growing up there, it was when they were building that, and they were tearing down orange groves and avocado groves and strawberry fields. When I grew up, there's actually the remnants of a cattle ranch there. So there were cowboys all around. So it was a place that's how I remember Irvine. That's the Irvine of my childhood. And growing up there, I sort of witnessed them sort of destroying it and turning into, just master planned living space. And so part of writing this book is because that's happening during this book. These two books are going on. I was really trying to capture that place, and in a sense, capture the destruction of it. It's sort of this old California that doesn't really exist in Southern California anymore, or it's difficult to find. So part of writing this is sort of missing that part of California that it's really difficult to find anymore.
I like the idea of setting as character, and I think Jane Harper also does that really well, where the Australian wilderness or
right.
the Tasmanian, sort of rough sea is part of the character. I love that. Sex and the City, another great example. The city is the fifth character. So I especially appreciate that in books. But you also really put a lot of time and thought into the people characters. Let's talk about the how, as this is part of a series, you are both thinking of this as the evolution of your characters, but also this snapshot.
Yeah. When I wrote Shadow Man, I wasn't expecting to be doing two more of these books. I wrote Shadow Man and turned it in, and then Random House came to me and asked if I would write two more books. With Natasha and Ben as sort of the central characters. So at that point, I hadn't been thinking about the evolution of both those characters. But Ben is a pretty troubled man. He's got a pretty troubled backstory from when he was a teenager. And so the first book is really about him trying to come face to face with that troubled history and deal with it. And Natasha Bettencourt really sort of helps him come to that process. So, Ben carries that history, even though he's sort of faced up to it with him. He's going to carry it throughout his life. So it's always a part of how he sort of deals with his world, and how he deals with his investigations, and how he deals with people he's investigating. So, when I think about Ben, I think about him being a person first, and then a detective. And my hope that and he brings a certain sensitivity to the way he investigates and the way he deals with people, but also brings a certain vulnerability that often causes him to act in ways he probably should not. And so for him, it's a constant evolution of trying to deal with that and sort of grow with that, and the constant evolution of those two characters coming together or not. And Natasha has her own backstory that is difficult as well, which sort of helps her understand what's going on with Ben. And where they're going together, I'm not quite sure. We'll find out in the next book, which I am just started. So we'll see. But Natasha goes through a pretty traumatizing experience in this book that is ultimately sort of enlightening to her. That I think is going to really affect her job as dealing with the dead as she moves on to the next book.
So, Alan, you said you didn't expect this to become a series, but Here we are. So, tell us what you mean by that. Did you just were thinking this was going to be one book, and then how did it turn into become a series?
Well, I mean, I'm always surprised when somebody asks me to write another book. So it's always like, thank you, I would be happy to, but I don't really expect it. So there's that. This. Like I said just a minute ago, I think with Ben, I was thinking about him being a sort of a character first that just happened to be a detective. And so when I wrote the first book, even though there's a serial killer in that book, which is sort of based upon the summer of 1985 with Richard Ramirez and the Night Stalker, and that summer, the book was really about this other investigation where he had to face up to what happened to him in his past. So while it was a police procedural, I didn't think of myself as writing a thriller, but how stupid and naive I was to think that I could put a serial killer and a detective in a novel and have it not be a some kind of thriller and procedural. So when I finished that book, and I think the editing process with my editor, it sort of pushed more towards a thriller as the book evolved. And so when she came to ask me about doing it, and I found I really enjoyed it. I found that rather than when I did my first book was really a sort of a quote literary novel, that the frustration of like finishing a scene and being like, okay, well, what's going to happen now, was really mitigated by the fact it's a procedural. There's an investigation going on, a crime happens, you find evidence, there's questions that come up with that evidence that have to be answered, and I really sort of ended up enjoying being able to use that as a way to move the plot forward and keep the plot moving while also exploring these characters.
Ooh. I think people are always sort of interested to hear about, the series versus the standalones. And Anissa would like to know, with this being a series, did that make the books easier or harder to write? Great question, Anissa. I'm wondering too.
I got to say, at the moment, with the third book, it feels like it's making it more difficult to write. I don't know how to answer that question, to be honest. I think in some ways it makes it easier because you have these characters. I do think that Ben and Natasha are pretty strong characters. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot going on. So to be able to go back to those characters that sort of, as I think as writers, you write these characters and they feel real to you. They feel like people that live and breathe in the world. So to be able to go back to those characters that you know pretty well and go with them again into a story is really helpful in some ways. In other ways, constantly thinking about what else can I reveal about these characters that will continue to make them interesting. So that trying to make that happen, I think sometimes feels a little difficult. But again, if you have good, strong characters that have a lot of depth and feel like real people, you can find that in them. So in that way, I think it's been very nice and being very helpful to go back and spend more time with them. And I like these characters a lot, so I'm happy to do so. So yeah, did that answer the question?
Anissa, let us know if that answered your question. Alan, let me ask you, because when you're writing a book I've never written a series, so I can't even imagine how hard it is. Do you keep like a character map or a story map where you're like, this happened between them? So you wouldn't say, for instance, oh, Natasha's never been to Paris, but then oops, in book 65,
Right.
you had sent Natasha had spent her junior year abroad in Paris or something. I mean, how do you keep it all straight?
Like, in the same way I should be like sitting down and doing what Jeffery Deaver does and actually write out plot that I follow. I should be doing that as well. It's a great advice. So maybe I'll do that for the next book. And partly because I didn't think I was going to write a second or third book. When I wrote the first one, I did not even think about doing something like that. So, a couple things happened. First, I would have to go and like, wait, what happened with these characters? When did this happen? So I'd have to go back and read the other book again to sort of find that information on why myself was going on. And then, once it got to editing and copy editing, because copy editors find every mistake that you make, period, and make you feel stupid because of your grammar. Then they start finding those things that are mistakes, that are anachronisms, and sort of take them out. So, but yes, I should go back through the books and do exactly what you said and make that sort of map about these characters, so I don't have to go through that in the next book.
Yeah, exactly. You could have, the character map, the actual location map. I mean, there could be a lot this could be the next Scarpetta. You could be, far down that road.
We'll see.
Anissa saying perfect answer. Thank you. I'm just scrolling through, making sure I didn't miss anybody's questions. Alan, can you give us any inside scoop on what you said you're working on the third one? You're finding the series harder. In what way? Just to continue finding, you said, revealing interesting things about these books.
I think there's a couple of issues at work here. I have about 20 different ideas, is one issue. And I'm trying to I've been doing some writing in various different possibilities and trying to find the one that sort of really grabs me and makes me feel like it's going to compel me forward for the next, year and a half, 2 years that I'm going to be writing. And I think I have a pretty good idea what I do. But one of the things that's really important to me as well is that I think these first two books try to have an exciting thriller aspect to them, but they also are trying to deal with pretty serious thematic issues, and issues that are really important to me, especially issues that are sort of are rooted in place and time then, that still have echoes to us today. So I've been trying to find that sort of social issue thing that I really want to explore, and I think I've found it. But if I talk about it and I say it out loud, I'm going to say like, that sounds so dumb, Alan, and then I'll have to like have a couple of beers and recover for a few days before I can think about it again.
Or you might just, or you might scare it away. You might scare the good idea away. You don't want to do that. Y'all, the book is not even out yet. It is out next Tuesday. So I'm going to put the pre-order link right here. So we are broadcasting to 6 different destinations, but go ahead. Here's the link. I put it in all of the comments. So click on over and be sure to order your copy of The Recruit so that next Tuesday, the good folks at Murder by the Book can send you your copy of Alan Drew's The Recruit. Yay. So in your prior book, Alan, let's talk about that just for one quick second. So Shadow Man, Lee Child, said it was wonderfully imagined and wonderfully written. Everything a great thriller should be, an absolute home run. Booklist awarded it a starred review, recommended it for fans of Michael Connelly, Tana French, and Dennis Lehane. Wall Street Journal said it was one of the best mysteries of the year in 2017. Now, first of all, congratulations on all of that amazing praise. But is that inspiring for you? Does it motivate you? Or is it almost, I would feel almost crippled by it because I'd be like, oh God, I can't do better than that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that cripple me when I'm writing. I think a lot of writers have sort of similar sort of sense of self-consciousness about their own work. And I don't know. It was, those reviews were very exciting. It was very nice to get them, and very nice to know that work was well received, and to be compared to those authors that I think can write really wonderful fast-driven thrillers, but also write really strong characters. You know, it's a big comparison to live up to, and I don't know that I quite do, but it was actually made me feel good. You know, it kind of, you know, bolstered me a little bit. But yeah, you know, writing this book, I felt a little bit of tension about that and worry that, you know, living up to that. But I also wanted this book sort of consciously knowing that I was writing a thriller, you know, and I was thinking much more consciously about how a thriller works. So in part because, say, the Wall Street Journal said it was one of the, you know, the best of 2017, it sort of gave me the confidence that I sort of, in some ways, maybe know what I'm doing a little bit, you know. So, you know, that's nice. And then having the early reviews for this book have been very, very wonderful to read. And, you know, as you know, you write a book and it goes out in the world, and it's in this place right now, this pre-publication place, where this anxiety where you have no control over it anymore, really.
It's too late to do anything about it.
Right. And you don't know how people are going to read it, how people are going to receive it. And you can't do anything if people hate it. You can't do anything if people love it. And if they do love it, that's all fantastic. And, you know, it just sort of validates the work that you've done alone, you know. And see, I mean, I used to, when I was, you know, started out writing my first book, I always had this sense that somebody's looking over my shoulder when I was writing. I had to have the door closed behind me in my office, or else it's like somebody's looking. But of course, nobody cares what you're doing. Nobody cares that you're writing a book. You know, they don't care until you've written the book. So one thing I've sort of learned to do is to go through my messy process, write really terrible stuff if I need to, take it out later, and not really worry yet about that. You know, be self-conscious about eyes on it already, because nobody's looking at it.
Perfect. We have 4 minutes left, you guys. I think we can take at least 2 more questions. So if anyone has any more questions for Alan, just let us know in the comments. Oh, perfect. Anissa, who's a librarian, would like to know, Alan, do you feel that, do you lead your characters or do they lead you? Great question. And is it different at different parts of the writing process? Oh, I love that.
You know, I would have said, especially with my first book, I would say that the characters lead me. You know, the authors talk about, oh, the characters speak to me, and so I follow the characters. And you know, there's some truth to that. I think there is a way in which, like, if I'm writing a scene and I think I know what a character is going to say, and the character says something that just at the moment, sort of, I write something that the character says that comes out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, there's something there. There's something's tapping into my own subconsciousness that needs to be explored, and that's a good sign to move some different direction. So I do that at times. But with writing the procedural, you know, you do kind of have to deal with the investigation. You know, you do have to have the character do things, move the character forward. But I always am conscious and trying to make sure that I think that my characters are acting in a way that they would do that would be true to their nature as much as possible. I mean, I do think, you know, I think all writers certainly bring themselves to their characters, even if the characters are writing are completely different from themselves. But there's always a way in which you as a writer get into your characters. And I think sort of, I wanted to be an actor years ago, and I'm a terrible actor. So I think that writing for me is a little bit like method acting. You know, it's trying to sort of deeply get into a character and try to occupy them rather than be myself, which is liberating at times, and try to follow them as much as possible.
When you are creating these characters, though, like, I was intrigued by what you said about you want to do things that are authentic to the characters themselves.
Right.
Is it hard for you as the creator of those characters to get out of the way of that, to let them be authentic, even when you can see that they're going to hurt themselves or hurt someone else or behave in a way that isn't, you know, kind? Or is it hard to step back?
I don't know. You know, I'm thinking about the first book with Ben, when Ben is doing things that he shouldn't be doing because of his own fear. And that was really important to the character, even though he's hurting people and potentially letting other people get hurt. So, you know, I think that when I'm running characters, you know, I come with, I think you have to care about your characters. If you don't care about your characters, then you're not going to write good characters. And I really deeply care about Ben and Natasha. So when Ben is doing things that hurts himself and hurts other people, I don't like it. But it's sort of necessary to his character in terms of getting beyond that to a place where he can get into another space where he's not doing those things. So does that make sense? So yeah, I mean, sometimes I have my characters doing things that make me uncomfortable and make me sad for them and make me angry with them. But I think that's sort of about writing about real life, about real people. We do things that hurt people. We do things that are bad for us. It doesn't make us bad people, but that happens. So as I try as much as possible to write honestly about that.
I like that. I struggle with that. I'm always like, no, be the best. Be the best you can be. Like, don't succumb to this. But then
Well, my editor at Random House got mad at me in the first book because she thought I was being too mean to Ben. She's like, let Ben have something. Let Ben win. I'm like, all right.
Like, no, Ben has to go sit in the corner some more.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. We are out of time. Time flies when you're having fun. Y'all, the book is out next Tuesday. And like Alan said, it is too late for him to do anything about it, which means we can pre-order now. So everybody grab your copy tonight. Tonight, and they our friends at the store will send it out to you next Tuesday. Alan, thank you so much for coming on to chat about your book for the first time with us in this.
You got through it. So.
Yay! In the special pre-launch event. Now you can go, do a bunch of vodka shots and relax on the couch and recover from the trauma that was this interview. And Anissa is saying, thank you so much. Great conversation. Anissa, thank you so much. Y'all, I'll be back at the top of the hour with Peter Spiegelman, a secret about a secret. Stay tuned.
Thank you.